Hello, and welcome to the n-Lorem podcast series that focuses exclusively on the needs of nano-rare patients and their families. I'm Stan Crooke. I'm the founder and chairman and CEO of n-Lorem Foundation. Today, we're privileged to have two very special guests, Dr. Neil Shneider, who is the Claire Tao Associate Professor of Neurology at the Columbia School of Medicine, and Sonja Kampfer, who is a partner at Vectis Consultants, and her most important role, I suspect she would say, is she's also the mother of a wonderful 16-year-old daughter named Anna. Welcome to both of you. It's great to have you. So Neil, I know that you did your undergraduate degree at Harvard and then an MD PhD at Columbia. And then I think spent some time at the NIH and then came back home to New York. So I guess you're a New York boy returned home, huh?
I am. I'm a chosen New Yorker, the best kind.
Well, if you're a real New Yorker, it's tough to take you out of the city, right?
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, it's good to have you, so I know all that, Neil. But tell me how you got interested in motor disorders, and in particular ALS, and those kinds of diseases, which are so devastating to so many people.
Yeah, my interest in ALS was a little indirect. I did, as you said, an MD PhD, and I did my graduate training in basic neuroscience, molecular neurobiology. And after my residency, I returned to basic neuroscience, and I was working with Tom Jessel, who's a developmental neurobiologist, and working in the motor system, trying to understand how motor neurons are born and establish their identity, the specific identity. But I was a neurologist, and I wanted to integrate my science, my research with my clinical activities. And so I walked across the street. I was at Columbia then again, and met up with Bud Rowland, who was a great figure in neurology and was an ALS specialist. And I began to see ALS patients at Bud's knee. And if you understand anything about ALS, you understand that there's huge need, there's great need of a population that is desperate for answers. And in the time until those answers come, clinicians like me need to take care of these patients, and these families need to help walk them through the disease, to try to do everything possible without a real treatment and cure to lessen the burden on the patient and on their families, and to maximize the length and the quality of their life. And it becomes a mission, not one that's easy often, but one to which people like me become committed pretty quickly, and ALS becomes the enemy.
It's pretty easy to understand how you could become committed to that, and all you have to do is meet one patient, and it's pretty obvious. I don't know about you, but I've been amazed at how much has been learned about the central neurological system over the last 20, 30 years. And of course, motor neurons are such fascinating cells because they can have these long projections called axons that are meter long and longer. It's hard to imagine a single cell with that kind of projection, eh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And motor neurons, they themselves are remarkable units, but they sit in this complex network of neurons and non-neuronal cells, and they function in this such a complicated system. And what we've learned, I think, over the last generation is that the dysfunction that leads to ALS is not just a dysfunction of the motor neuron. It's the entire system many elements of that system that are involved, contributing to the dysfunction and ultimately the demise of the motor neuron. And as we begin to think about, how to treat this, how to prevent and treat ALS, we really have to think about all of the elements that are contributing to this disorder.
Yeah, and if you just think about what we're learning in the few patients that we've now been able to treat with FUS-ALS, which we'll come to in a little bit, is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And your wife, Leah, is curator at MoMA, is that right? Or a curator at MoMA?
She's a curator, and she runs the research programs at the museum.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you get into you get to see the exhibits before they show up to the rest of us, eh?
Well, hers anyway. I get spoiled. You get to see them before the crowds come, so it's quite a privilege.
I'm going to hit you up for next time I'm in New York. Okay.
You're welcome.
And Sonja, I know that your husband is Uwe. Did I pronounce that right?
Uwe, yeah.
Well, good. That's the sum total of German I speak. But anyway, it's a start anyway.
Okay.
And I know he is head of an association of wine growers, I suppose is what you said. Mm-hmm. And you're a partner at Vectus as a business consultant. And so as you are you still able to conduct your business activities with all the issues that Anna is having?
Yeah, no, I gave up my job for the time being, because there's so much to do around Anna, and it's and I feel that I have to be there for her, and but it's not only a burden, it's also very rewarding to care for her, and to see how, thanks to Neil and his colleagues, how she's developing and is sort of escaping this really terrible disease. Yeah,
that's one of the features of disease of all sorts, but especially these extraordinarily severe and rare diseases, is that they affect not just the person, they affect the family, and they're extraordinarily destructive, and families either come together or they split apart, it seems. And I'm pleased to see that your family come together. And
for us, this meant, first of all, not being together for Christmas in 2020. So I spent Christmas and the New Year's Eve with Anna in New York, and her sister and my husband, they stayed in Germany, also because of this Corona situation, and really had a hard time, and we really had to find ways to still have a sort of normal family life. Yeah.
So, how old is Anna's sister?
Anna's sister is 16, and Anna is 17 now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anna's sister is perfectly healthy, and everything's all right with her.
Yeah.
And that adds a burden to a young person that is a challenge for most young people to contend with, and the attention on the other child and all of the things that come to play. I'm sure your family's had to contend with a lot of that sort of thing too.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we move to the star of the podcast, and that's Anna. Why don't you just tell us about Anna before and then after she became, sick.
Yeah. Well, Anna was born in 2004 in Hamburg, and at the beginning she was perfectly healthy child. It was only at the age of 3 that some people in the kindergarten noticed that she was trembling from time to time, which was a bit strange. And we went to a neurologist for children, but he reassured us there's nothing wrong with her. It's good for her to do lots of sports, but well, we don't have to worry. And we didn't worry, and she developed, well, like a healthy child, and she became very athletic, and she did well at school. Everything was nice. We were just a normal family, and at the age of 15 started that she was sort of having problems with her breathing. She was short of breath when she ran up the stairs at home, and it was the first signs. And then it moved on to her having problems speaking, and then she lost a lot of weight. She had problems eating, and well, it developed really horribly till the point that she really needed support for her ventilation, that she got a gastro tube because she was not able to swallow anymore. And yeah, we had horrible times. And what was also horrible was that we saw her suffering, getting weaker and weaker, and no one had any idea. Well, we went to see lots and lots and lots of doctors. No one had any idea what this could be. Yeah, no one thought about ALS because ALS is not a disease of a 16-year-old person. Yeah, and it was then in, well, almost after a year that one specialist in Munich, Professor Müller-Felber, who had seen a lot of very rare diseases in children, neurological diseases especially, who was the first to mention ALS, that this could be a very rare form of ALS. And then we well, we did genetic testings, and then the outcome was, yeah, it is ALS. And we were, well, completely shocked. Yeah, that was.
You were short of breath initially. I imagine you got referred to some specialist of some sort.
Yeah.
What sort of specialist was that person?
Yeah, the first person was a specialist on lungs and breathing. Yeah, and they said, okay, there's something, some kind of obstacle, but we don't know what, or we don't see anything. Yeah, and then we had her MRTs of her brain till the one neurologist told us maybe it's a psychological problem. Yeah, maybe she has some, well, like teenager problem that is showing in such rare form. But well, we went to see lots and lots of specialists. Yeah, but as I said, no one thought about ALS except for this Professor Müller-Felber in Munich. Yeah.
Yeah, it is tragically a very, very common story for these what we call nano-rare diseases, because physicians recognize patterns, and if you've never seen that pattern, it's hard to recognize. And your journey was, you know, typical in the process, but maybe a little better than many that we've dealt with, in that you got an answer, you know, in a year or so. When it seems like the average time to diagnosis for most of our patients is somewhere around, if they live, 5 to 8 years of what you go through. So
yeah.
that I understand how debilitating all that process is, and regret that you had to do it, but at least you did get to an answer. Yeah. So Neil, why don't you walk us through what's wrong with Anna?
So Anna has a very rare, nano-rare case of ALS. As Sonja suggested, ALS is not a disease of 15, 16 60-year-old people, it's an old person's disease, right? You're in your 40s, 50s, 60s.
Not old anymore for me, Neil.
No, for me either, but it is for Anna for sure.
Yeah.
And so people, as you said, don't recognize the patterns. 15, 16-year-olds don't have ALS, so it doesn't get into the differential. And to make it more complicated, Anna has no family history of ALS. Anna's mutation is what we call de novo or spontaneous mutation. Neither Uwe or Sonja have this mutation. And so it, like other young people with this mutation, arose spontaneously for reasons we don't entirely understand, arose on its own in Anna's genome. And it lay dormant, not entirely dormant. She had symptoms, the tremors, and maybe other issues that Sonja describes, suggested, were suggestions, unrecognized, that there was a problem, but it wasn't until she was 15 that this problem manifested itself as ALS, as motor neuron disease. This is a mutation that is one of, if not the most aggressive, causes of ALS. Anna did relatively well. She had, perhaps because she had respiratory and bulbar symptoms, she became aware of the problem a year before diagnosis. I think other young people with this same mutation, like JC and her sister, who had limb onset, they didn't figure this out until much later. They could compensate more for their problems in the way that you can't compensate for breathing and bulbar problems. And so Anna had more of a pre-diagnostic phase, which was lucky, I guess. I mean, not that you can say that she was lucky in any way here, but it gave time for her, to go through a diagnostic process, to get a genetic diagnosis. And she was lucky too, again, in that she had extraordinary parents who were going to leave no stone unturned for her. And upon the, as soon as they had the genetic diagnosis, they began to reach out and made their way to me, I think, in pretty rapid order. We had, at that point, treated a number of patients with the ASO that we call J-Suffusin. That was a ASO developed by Ionis, shared with us, and made Ionis made this is pre-n-Lorem, of course, but made this therapeutic available to us in a way that allowed us to treat Anna with an antisense molecule, an antisense therapy. The goal of that therapy was to lower the levels of this toxic protein, FUS, in Anna's system, in her nervous system, and to sort of put the brakes on a process that had begun a year early. And her response has been, in my mind, remarkable. Young people with this mutation don't do well. They progress very rapidly, as Anna began to do, and they usually reach some kind of a terminal point within a year, most 18 months of disease onset. And we met Anna in December of 2020, and we're 18 months almost since the initiation of her therapy. And if you were to look at her now, I think you would say that she is doing well in a way that it's hard to explain based on the natural history of that disease.
So Anna has a form of ALS called FUS-ALS. The mutation is in this FUS gene, and it's what's called a toxic gain of function mutation, in that the protein that's being made is itself toxic to neurons and causes them to deteriorate. At the time that the decision about the FUS-ALS effort at Ionis, of course, I was chairman and CEO there, and so I'm well aware of what was going on. And you mentioned bulbar symptoms. You might just explain what kind of symptoms bulbars are.
Right. So just maybe because I didn't say it, ALS is a disease that affects motor neurons. Motor neurons are the neurons that control muscular function. Those muscles include the muscles of our limbs, our arms and legs. Also includes the bulbar muscles, those which control talking and chewing and swallowing. And ALS is ultimately a fatal disease because those motor neurons also control the muscles of respiration, of breathing, the diaphragm and the accessory muscles of breathing. And all of those things are compromised when the motor neurons degenerate. ALS, in most cases, there's no known underlying genetic cause. But in about 10 to 15% of patients, we know that there is a mutation, a genetic mutation that underlies the problem, that causes the disease. There are dozens of ALS-associated genes. FUS is one of them, and a relatively rare cause of ALS. It represents about maybe 4%, of the genetic cases overall. But in the pediatric cases, juvenile or pediatric cases, like Anna's, FUS mutations are more highly represented. It's a more common cause of this rare form of ALS, this nano-rare form of ALS. And so in this case, FUS is our target, right? The ASO, the therapeutic, is aiming at this one causal gene in this limited rare form of ALS.
And so it is one of the big advantages that we have as genetic therapy that the nano-rare patient brings to us is they almost all, not all, but almost all have a clearly defined mutation in a single gene that is the cause, and many of the times that we can correct that. And Neil, I know that this all began with two identical twins, and one of whom had developed FUS-ALS and died when she was 16, as I recall. And then the other, despite being an identical twin, didn't manifest her problems until somewhat later. Can you just briefly tell us about that family?
Right. So J.C. Hermstead was my patient, and Joseph Fusen is named in her honor. This is a remarkable family that's been horribly affected by this disease. Alex, as you said, was 11, 12 years old at onset, and she was kept alive on a ventilator for a number of years and ultimately succumbed to her disease at age 17, Anna's age now. And JC, her sister, lived without symptoms until she was 24 years old. And why there was a 12-year difference, identical twins with the same mutation, de novo, again, spontaneous mutation. Why it took an additional 12 years for JC to become symptomatic is one of the great questions, big questions that we would love to understand, because it speaks to the trigger events, right? It's not enough just to have the genetic mutation. There's a second event of some kind that triggers the onset of the disease. Why did Anna live for 15 years with this mutation and not have motor neuron disease, right? There's some second event, some second hit, if you will, that triggers the disease onset, and we very much would like to understand what this is. We also don't care, in a sense, that whatever that event is, we would like to intervene before that event happens, right, in the future, if we can identify these mutations early, and reduce people's risk of onset using the same kind of technologies, the same antisense therapeutics that we're using in the symptomatic affected individuals, we think, we could maybe influence that onset event. So JC was the first. The therapeutic was developed with her in mind. Her disease onset prompted our initial approach to Frank Bennett and Ionis about this as a potential therapeutic strategy for our patient. The first FDA program, expanded access, investigational new drug protocol was written for JC, and she was the first, assuming all of the risks and potential problems associated with a therapeutic that had never before been given to a human being. So Anna benefited from JC's courage and sacrifice, and a small number of other patients who were treated with JC Fusin before Anna. And what's been lovely, and Sonja has met Lori, or spoken to Lori, JC and Alex's mom. And there's a community, of people that has gathered around this problem.
Oh, Sonja, back to Anna. I suspect that the day that you were told she had ALS was the end of the world. In the way you felt. And I'm sure that you heard there was no treatment. It was hopeless, right?
Yeah, from the doctors we heard there's no cure. Yeah, you can do therapies just to make it easier, maybe to have a bit more time. But there's no cure. You can't cure this disease. And it was my father-in-law, Anna's granddad, who was a physician himself. He contacted a relative in Newark, near New York, and this person, he used his network to ask for anyone in the US who knows anything about this FUS mutation, and so we got into contact with Shneider, and that was for us. That was the best thing that could have happened to us. Yeah,
and you just described one of the really serious issues that we're trying to contend with nano-rare patients is there is no path. There is no way to navigate. You were very fortunate. Sadly, most are not. And so as a community, we have to come together and find ways to build better navigation systems for people. And I think we're all committed to working on that. But I want to now, so December, you spent Christmas in New York.
Yeah.
Hardly a great way to spend Christmas if you're separated from your family. And at that stage, how sick was Anna?
She still could walk. And we walked from the hotel to the first dose of JC Fusion together. But she was not able to really speak anymore. She had this gastro tube, so she was not able to eat anymore, or to eat properly anymore. She was quite weak. Yeah, it was really exhausting for her. The flight to New York, and then the treatment itself was exhausting, and she needed time to relax afterwards. That was well, her biggest problem was breathing and not being able to eat or to speak or to swallow. Like these bulbar symptoms were quite elaborated already. Yeah.
So she had a feeding tube in, and that was
Mhm.
really the only thing that was keeping her from just wasting away.
Yeah.
And what did, so she was treated. I'm sure you had hope, but not expectations. What did you watch in Anna over the next little bit?
Mm. I mean, over the next weeks, because we stayed in New York till end of February, we noticed, or I noticed because I lived with her there, that it sort of stabilized. I mean, from May till December, yeah, you could really watch her, how do you say that, wearing off or getting weaker and weaker. And I had the impression with the first dose, the second dose 2 weeks later, she still lost some ground, but it was much, much slower than before. Yeah. And we could still do some sightseeing in New York, and she loved Central Park, and we could walk there and things like that. So so we really enjoyed our time in New York. We were missing the family, but well, we had to make the best of it. Yeah.
You had hope.
Yeah.
Right. So then she continued to get a little better, and eventually she had another swallowing problem, I think, right? So
yeah,
walk us through all that.
Yeah. I mean, when we came back, she sort of slightly lost more function, the ability to walk. She got weaker walking. It was more, the distances became a bit shorter. And I remember in June, last time we were in New York, she was not able to stand up and sit down on her own. But after June, it got better. Yeah. Then her ability to get up and sit down came back in July. She was able to walk upstairs slowly, but she was able to do that again. Before, in June and May, my husband had to carry her upstairs. And there were signs of recovering. I mean, we had this hope, but this was really little miracles for us. But then, unfortunately, in August, she got a lung infection. And that was really horrible because her airways were blocked one night. So she had to get reanimated. Did you say that, reanimated? That's right.
Yeah, she had to be put on a ventilatory support, right?
Yeah, I mean, she was like 30 minutes without own circulation. Yeah, she had to be brought back to life. Yeah, and then it took the doctors 2 hours to really stabilize her again. And and because of this infection, she was so weak that they put her in an artificial coma. And at the end of 2 weeks, the doctor said, we can't get her to breathe on her own again. She needs a tracheotomy. And well, we had talked about that before, because what happened in between was that in July, we found the possibility with Professor Weber in St. Gallen in Switzerland that he could give the doses of JC Fusion to Anna in Switzerland, because before in March, April, May, June 2021, we always traveled back for a week to New York, back and forth, to get JC Fusion from Dr. Shneider and his team. But it got, that was really exhausting for Anna. And we didn't have any possibility to get that in Germany, because there are a lot of regulations and very bureaucratic things against this treatment. In August, then we sort of had this crisis. She needed the tracheotomy, and we had talked about it with Professor Weber at the beginning of August, just in case. And we were happy that we had done that, so we were able to to be sure that Anna wants that, because she had told us she is convinced it's getting better, and if a tracheotomy is necessary, she wants that to be done. So she had that, and in the beginning she needed ventilation 24 hours a day. And in September we were really devastated. We thought maybe she couldn't move anymore because of this artificial coma and all the medication she had. She was completely paralyzed. She couldn't move her fingers. She couldn't move anything. She couldn't talk to us. It was really horrible to see. We really had to guess what she was meaning when we were standing at her bed. But end of September, slowly, step by step, she got functions back. End of September, she was able to type on her iPhone, and then she was able to move more and more. Then in October, she was able to get up, walk, and it became better and better. And at this point, she's able to do 9 hours a day without any ventilation. A new record from last week. She's able to walk up to 4 or 5 kilometers. She is training to speak again, which is hard because her tongue is still paralyzed. We have a team of people here, people coming every day to work with her, therapists for breathing, and she's very ambitious. She's doing 2 hours of schoolwork every day today. So, we really have more than hope now that she can get back into a state where she's able to lead a life on her own.
That's a wonderful story. And so she had a swallowing problem, got her airway clogged, then probably aspirated and had an aspiration pneumonia is what that's called. And I'm sure at that stage, Neil, you felt that that despite all the progress that she had made, that it would be unlikely that you'd see any more progress out of Anna.
The event that Sonja described was very serious. It was life-threatening, and we were worried. Typically, with our patients, when something like that happens, it often is life-ending. Anna has the advantage of being 17 years old and otherwise healthy and strong, and was able to fight her way back. But our point here is that yes, she recovered from the acute insult from the event that brought her into the hospital, but her motor system was able to recover, right? I mean, typically you would expect that her disease would continue to progress through that period, and that the debility associated with her hospitalization and illness would compound with the motor neuron disease, and that would really just spiral downward. But no, she she was able to recover, and in fact, I think she is better now than she was before the event in August.
Yeah.
And so that is just not what we would expect based on, again, the natural course, the natural history of the forms of ALS associated with this mutation, this particular mutation, right, which is very stereotypical.
Well, it's a wonderful story punctuated by tragic events and deep sadness and loss. And, those are the stories of our patients, but it's a story of hope fulfilled and a family that can look forward to a future that is, we hope, very different from the future that they had just a year or so ago. And I'm sure this Christmas was better than some other Christmases, and I'm hoping next Christmas will be even better for the Kämpfer family.
Yeah.
I want to thank both Neil and Sonja for this, but please especially thank Anna for her courage and stamina and for staying in there and putting up the good fight that she's had. It's wonderful sharing this story with you, and I'm sure you'll hear all kinds of appreciation from all our other listeners as well. Thanks so much.
Anna is convinced that one day she will give her own interview to you. She's training for that.
Well, get her going. I look forward to doing it. We need the star on this show one of these days. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
n-Lorem is a nonprofit committed to discovering and providing personalized experimental treatments for free for life to patients with genetic diseases that affect 1 to 30 patients worldwide, referred to by n-Lorem as nano-rare. Many of these patients progress and die without ever achieving a diagnosis. This is where n-Lorem comes in. They do the impossible by providing hope, and for those that they can help, free lifetime treatment. For more information about n-Lorem or today's episode, visit n-Lorem.org. Any questions can be sent into podcast@n-Lorem.org. Search n-Lorem on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook to connect with us. This video is hosted by Dr. Stan Crooke and produced with the help of the following professionals. Thank you for watching.